Just because you're older does not make you wise. Just because you're older does not mean that I owe you anything. I don't owe you respect. I don't owe you anything. Respect is not given, it is earned. We need to decenter gender. It's not a thing anymore. It doesn't mean as much as we're making it mean. A lot of you don't have a relationship with God, and it shows. You're stuck in a religious performative cycle. I have prayed for you. That is relationship, my God. That is relationship. Welcome to the Catalyst Chronicles. I'm your host, PR, and this is the Restoration Room. The Restoration Room is our monthly episodes where we dig a bit deeper into the mindsets, the belief systems that has created trauma, that has created pain, and has left us within the shell of ourselves. Last month, we did Broken Foundations, where we dug a bit deep into the different kind of mindsets that we are left with when we grow up in broken foundations. And this month, we are going to learn to decenter certain concepts and ideas out of our lives so that we can make room for other things. The things that the African community, the Christian community must learn to decenter, must unlearn in order for us as a community, as a group, as a people, as a tribe, as a nation to be able for us to move forward. The first thing we need to decenter is age. I think Africa has an ungodly perception of what age means. We have this distorted perception that age equates to wisdom, equates to authority. If you're older, you're better, you're intelligent, you're wise, and if you're younger, then nothing good can come out of you. We need to decenter age. We have people that have been kicked out of their family homes and their household because they're too old not to be married, or they're too old to not have children, or they're too old to not have acquired or achieved certain things. This is so toxic. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't motivate and encourage people to want to achieve these things, but the idea we have around some of these things and the accomplishments and the rate to accomplish them and wrap it around people's age is toxic. We have to unlearn that, Africa. Just because you're older does not make you wise. Just because you're older does not mean that I owe you anything. I don't owe you respect. I don't owe you anything. Respect is not given, it is earned. The African community needs to get away from looking at children as though they're non-entities. Oh, you are a child, in my language, those things, they seem right and they feel right, but it is not. It's ungodly. Because of this age thing, a lot of people almost missed out on God because of the age thing. Sarah, if she lived today, we would have been laughing at her, saying that there is something wrong with her, and coming up with all kind of satanic and demonic ideologies about her. And yet there was nothing wrong with her. It just wasn't God's time. What about Jeremiah? When God met him, his first thought was, whoa. I come from a people who don't appreciate young people doing the kind of things you're asking me to do. And God said, nonsense. Don't say that. We have to take after the so-called God we claim we serve. You go into a household and they see children as less than just because they haven't been on earth longer. Does that even make sense? No, it does not. We gotta learn to treat people with respect because they've earned it, not because chronologically they've lived long. I'll be the first to tell you, I don't care how old you are. I don't care what part of the world you're from. If you come around me with disrespect for whatever reason, but especially simply because you perceive me to be younger than you, I will kick you out of my environment. It is toxic, it is destructive, and it's anti-godly. This was the same mindset the Pharisees and the Sadducees have. How dare you? What do you mean before Abraham I was? You are a child, you're this. Isn't this the capital? That's how you think. That's how a lot of these Africans think. And I hate that for my people because we don't mean to be bad. We don't always mean to say these things in a harmful way, but it is. It destroys the confidence that God is building in these younger people. It kills that drive and that motivation. Do you really mean to tell me there is no other thing you can say to a child other than bringing up the fact that they're a child? Do you want a medal for that? Stating the obvious? You think the child doesn't know that you're older? As an adult, the moment you need to bring in age, you have already disrespected yourself. Every adult should carry themselves in a way where you don't need to bring up an age to demand respect. It should be obvious. It really should. The next thing we need to decenter Africa is gender. All this, you're a woman, this nonsense stuff we do, we would not be as far behind as we are if we decentered some of these toxic mindsets. It's ungodly. You hear in a Christian household, the man is the provider. And so his whole life, he grows up believing that it's his job to provide everything. Everything? No. Because he's a male? No. That is not godly. And I don't care what Bible verse you're about to quote to counter what I'm saying. You don't have an accurate understanding of the Word of God. It is not the way God designed it to be. There are many things that men can provide that has nothing to do with money. But we've made this provision thing a Lord and a Savior to the point where marriages are failing because young women are going into marriage and relationship with the mindset that it's the man's job to provide everything. Let's just even take financial. You don't want to work, you don't want to have a job, you don't want to contribute to the household. You say you're building, you don't want to contribute any sort of value. Your whole approach is, I'm a woman, but yet you're praying for God to use you. No, He won't, because you are using your gender as a reason to not contribute value in a household. But you want to give value to an entire world? No, He won't. You can quote me and I will stick everything I have on what I'm saying. He will not. That's why a lot of you are not fine. That's why God is not using a lot of you. That's why a lot of you are not where you're supposed to be in destiny, because you have a mentality that literally is designed to program you to not contribute value. Learn a skill. Do something. And on the other side, men go into marriages and relationships believing that they are the head, and because of that, they are commanded and called to provide, and they kill themselves. They do all kinds of things just to measure up to that tall religious glass that we're raising, and they're never able to meet it. And because in their mind, they believe they have failed, it immediately affects how they look at the marriage, and the marriage fails. We need to decenter gender. It's not a thing anymore. It doesn't mean as much as we're making it mean. It's just, in the grand scheme of things, it does not hold the weight we are claiming that it holds. Decenter gender. The next thing we need to decenter is marriage. The obsession with get married. You're too old. Why aren't you married yet? When are you going to get married? Over 80% of women's prayer is marriage. Outside of that, it's praying for the marriage that they're in. Marriage is great. Marriage is beautiful. But it is not all that God has to offer just because I'm a woman. There are other gifts. There are other blessings in God that I can enjoy and have a fulfilled life outside of marriage. I'm not saying don't desire marriage. I'm not saying don't pray about marriage. But you can be a complete whole person outside of marriage. We need to decenter the validation and the attention we give marriages. And because of that, Satan is programming all kind of satanic union. People who were never destined to be together somehow, because of the heightened emotions due to pressure, due to societal standards, cultural standards, foundational standards, people have such a heightened appetite for marriage that they meet people and there is so much blindness and lack of discernment, they can't pick out the red flags and they jump into these things. And then after the marriage doesn't work, when they return, we then turn around and make fun of them or blame them or criticize them for something we caused and produced in the first place. Decenter marriage. if you never marry, you can have a healthy relationship with God. You can have a very fulfilling life. You can make an impact on the world. So what if your family doesn't approve that maybe you don't have the desire to marry, which I don't agree with. I think everyone should be. But if you don't, it is okay. It is okay. Decenter marriage. And as you decenter these things, what you're doing is giving God space. A lot of these things have become such huge idols within our lives that God is actually not at the center of our lives as we claim and we sing about and pray about. It's actually not true, because we prioritize these things so much within our culture. We need to decenter it. The next thing we need to decenter is religion. A lot of you don't have relationship with God, and it shows. You're stuck in a religious performative cycle. What you're doing, it's like automatic, because you're being programmed. You go to church, you pray, you fast, you sow a seed. You go to church, you pray, you fast, you sow a seed. You go to church, you pray. It's just a cycle you're in. When was the last time? And when I talk about relationship with God, people immediately assume, oh, being able to cry before God. That's not a relationship. If you cry in front of me, does that mean we have a relationship? Even if I'm talking to you and you cry, does that mean that we have a relationship? No. It just means that we were talking and you ended up crying. That's not relationship. A relationship looks like me being able to tell God no. A relationship looks like God being able to tell me no. Some of you, God can't say no. So he doesn't even say anything. Because if he was to open his mouth, the first thing he would say is no. Not because you don't deserve what you're asking for. It's not the right time. You're not matured enough yet. And some of you, the moment we perceive God saying no, we're bitter, we're angry, we're upset. And we do things like fasting and praying and sowing seed to try to manipulate God's hands to get him to release what he has already said no. That's not a healthy relationship. That's not a way to build a relationship with God. It looks like when God asks me to do something, and after thinking about it, I realize I don't have enough resource. I don't have the right understanding for it. I can go to God and say, Lord, you told me to do this, but I think this. What do you think? And he'll say, okay, I can see why you're thinking that. Let's try it. That's a relationship. And that's where I want you to be. I don't practice performative Christianity. I do not. And no, I'm not afraid to say no to God. And I know some religious person is going to hear my teaching saying, oh, she's teaching people to disobey God. Let me tell you something. God is not threatened by me saying no. And no, there is no spiritual law that's going to come after me because I said no. And what I mean by being able to say no to God, it's not necessarily me teaching you to just say no just to say no. It's about me teaching you that a healthy relationship goes both ways. If your relationship with God looks like he telling you what to do all the time, that's not a healthy place. God wants genuine relationship. I'll give you an example. There was a certain time where I needed to hire like social media management and stuff. And I kept thinking of this particular person, like, okay, maybe I should hire him. He's good, etc. But after I thought about it, I'm like, no. They might have skills, but they lack this, they lack that, they lack character. I'm not hiring that person. The thought kept coming and I felt like, okay, why is God insisting that I hire this person? And I went back to God and I said, Lord, I am not hiring this person and these are my reasons. And he said to me, let's find someone else. This is what healthy relationship looks like. Some of you are so religious, the thought of this is like, oh, who does she think she is? Get over yourself. If your entire relationship with God is based on your religious activities and performance, it is not healthy. This season, the Bible says that God is looking for worshipers who worship him in truth, something that you actually identify with. Don't just walk around doing all sort of things. My pastor said we should fast, so I'm fasting. My man of God said we should fast, I'm fasting. I'm doing this because my church is doing that. Now, again, I'm not saying doing those things are bad. I'm saying that those things that you're doing, let it be from a place of conviction. Otherwise, you cannot walk in mental dominion. And that is the state with a lot of our generation. People actually don't have power over their mind. They will tell themselves, I don't want to do this thing anymore. The next thing you know, they're doing exactly what they said they didn't want to do anymore. How and why? Why are we not teaching about these things, body of Christ? Why are we not giving explanation for why there are so many broken and fractured mindsets within our culture? Decenter religion. Religion is not a relationship. Performing is not a relationship. Some of you, there are people that are so obsessed with being approved by God that they will literally read the Bible word for word and do it word for word because they think that that's what will gain them approval. Newsflash, you don't need to do anything to get God's approval. He has already approved you through Christ. Many of you are doing ministry not because you were called to do ministry, because there is something inherently in you that has programmed you to be that. In order for God to really love you and value and appreciate you, you have to be doing His work. You have to be in a fivefold ministry, and that's how you found yourself there. Meanwhile, your industry is fashion. So there is a gap in that industry, and you're running around playing church when you were never called to do that because you think that doing ministry means you're doing the will of God. The will of God can be captured in different industries. You don't have to have a Bible study group. You don't have to do what I'm doing. You don't have to do what anybody else is doing. You can literally just start from a genuine relationship and see where it goes. Lord, sometimes I go to God and say, I am exhausted. I'm not doing anything anymore. I'm tired. And I'll cry a bit. I'll laugh a bit. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about that. And before you know it, I have the strength. There's some things that I want to do. And let me just balance this because I talked about how I say no to God. Let me tell you the other aspect of that relationship. There's certain things that I want to do. God will say, not right now. God will say, no, not that. God will say, try this instead because it's a relationship. It's not a dictatorship. I'm not performing. I'm not looking to score points with God. I'm not looking to appear righteous to you or anybody else. I'm not looking to do anything to prove anything. I am just me with Him. And if it's something that He really needs me to do, then I trust Him to give me the information I need to have the conviction I need to do it, because God knows how my mind works. That if I don't have that conviction, I don't care how many prophets you bring to me, I'm not doing it. That's how He created me. And I appreciate the way He created me because I don't fall for this manipulation that people are doing on God's internet. You gotta find that place of genuineness and decenter religion. Come out of what you were taught as a child. Come out of it. It was a good place to start, but you're an adult now. How come you can't think for yourself? How come you can't think for yourself? It shouldn't be that way, should it? The next thing we need to decenter is parents and church leaders. Some of you have such ungodly fear of your parents. Now, I'm not telling you to disrespect your parents. So if you go out there and you do some rubbish and you say, oh, well, PR said that, that's not what I'm saying, and God is my witness. And if you come on my platform trying to debunk what I'm saying and correct what I'm saying, then you obviously did not catch the revelation either. What I'm teaching you is to unlearn this ungodly fear you have of church leaders and your parents. They are not God. And because they are not God, they can be wrong. A lot of you are where you are because you listen to that adult. You listen to that church leader. You listen to that youth pastor. You listen to that parent. And now you are in a place where you know God never called you to be. They're human beings. You don't have to disrespect someone to not worship them. There is a realm of a healthy balance where you can honor the sacrifice of your mom and your dad and the people who raised you or the people that are watching you over you spiritually, and you're making them your God looks like everything they say you do. You don't think for yourself. You don't probe into it. You don't even ask God if it's true. You don't even think for yourself to see if this is something that aligns. You have come into partnership with Satan and them to believe that you're not capable of making the right decisions for yourself. And so as a result, you need to be told what to do all the time. And you have 30-year-old adults in marriages who pick up their phone and call their parents about everything because they were never taught to be critical thinkers for themselves. Africa, we need to decenter these things. They are not godly. What they produce are leaders who don't have the capacity to think, and therefore they make all kinds of decisions. And then we turn around and blame the leaders that we as a culture are producing. I don't get it. We need to decenter a lot of these things. Another thing we need to decenter is people's opinions and advice. People will give you advice based on their point of view, based on what they have experienced and what they have learned. And if they don't stay with God long enough to understand the whole counsel of God, you're going to sit around people that will give you all kinds of advice that may yield temporary results, so you think that it was a good advice, but what it is producing in you is far more detrimental. Decenter people's advice. Some of you come on here and you listen to my podcast, and maybe what I'm saying is true, but it's not true for you in that season. Don't eat it. What I teach is the whole counsel of God, but it may only apply to you per specific season. Learn yourself. Learn the seasons you're in so that when I teach you things, you can apply it with wisdom. It's not everything that I'm teaching you that is true for you at that particular time. Learn yourself. Learn your season. It doesn't mean that the things that people are saying are lies. It just means that you don't have dominion over your mind. And so every information people give you, you internalize it and you process it as your truth and you run off with it. That is not healthy. Decenter people's opinions, people's advice, people's thoughts, people's POV. It's their perspective. We appreciate it, we respect it, but don't eat it and don't wear it and don't make it part of who you are. It is not healthy. As Christians, we need to decenter fasting. I know that fasting and prayer produces results, but the way that we're teaching fasting and prayer will leave a generation where they don't build relationship, because our generation wants what works. They don't necessarily want God because they want what works. And if we continue to teach this doctrine of prayer and fasting, they will abandon genuine relationship, following after religious and spiritual patterns because they want what works. And we're seeing this already. You see a young woman who has a prophetic destiny. Next thing you know, she's into spiritism, clairvoyant and flamboyant and whatever other kind of buoyance there is, and they're playing around with sounds and sages and mystical things, and they're ascending and descending and projecting and astral projecting here and there. The girl genuinely had a prophetic destiny, but she wasn't taught relationship. She was condemned. She was told to perform. She was told to fast. She didn't understand why. She was told to pray for long hours because it proved that she had capacity. She was told to read her word because it proved that she wanted a relationship with God. She was never taught that she can literally just sit and just talk to God. She can just go to God and say, I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm upset, I need help. She was not taught that God helps people. She was not taught that God is kind. She was not taught God is genuinely interested in her, not to use her to do ministry, but just in her as herself. Nobody taught her that. Instead, they did teach her spiritual laws. They did teach her performance. And so now she grows up and she gets to a point where she's like, I don't want to do any of this stuff anymore. I'm tired. They may not verbally say this to themselves, but that's where the mentality is coming from. They're exhausted. They want something that works. And so they start practicing all kinds of strange things. And now her destiny is destroyed because we have church leaders that are obsessed with spiritual laws, that are obsessed with fasting and praying and sowing seeds and giving and teaching all these performance-based things that genuinely does not lead to a relationship. If you give me money, does that mean we have a relationship? No. So what makes you think that you giving God money means you have a relationship with Him? You don't. We need to reteach relationship. Instead of obsessing about the kind of seeds we should sow and how long people should pray for and the fasting that they should be doing, and if you can't fast till this amount of time, you're not spiritually strong, and all that stuff are designed to enhance the relationship. They will not produce the relationship. They won't. If those things could produce genuine relationship, the Pharisees and the Sadducees would have had a better relationship with Jesus. Come to think of it, Jesus told his people that men ought always to pray. But was there really anywhere in the Bible that we heard Jesus instructing them, Peter, go pray? Was there anywhere in the Bible where he told John, you need to fast? John, I'm seeing something in the realm of the spirit, and you need to go and fast. You need to go and pray and it will go away. Actually, he taught the fasting was good. He taught the prayer was good. But when it came down to the enemy attacking Peter, he didn't come to Peter and say, Peter, the enemy is desiring to seek you. You need to go and fast. You need to go and fast right now. He said, I have prayed for you. That is relationship, my God. That is relationship. That's not performance. A lot of the Christian communities do not have a relationship. They don't understand Jesus. We wrap ourselves around a lot of things that we think produce genuine relationship, and it does not. I'm not saying don't pray, and I'm not saying don't fast. I'm saying decentering. Don't make it the foundation of the relationship you have with God. As you are, if you never fasted a day in your life, God will still love you. God will still bless you. God will still walk with you. Does that mean you should just walk around and never fast? No, absolutely not, right? Because we understand the fasting. We understand the spiritual intelligence behind fasting, but we will not idolize it. And when Satan sees that you have this kind of mindset, what he does is create a lot of things around you that will cause you to want to fast, to want to pray. And so you see believers, they're dissipating so much energy in fasting and giving and sowing and doing all these religious things. But if you weigh the actual spiritual intelligence they have, it is that of a babe in Christ. And these are people that have large pulpits, been doing ministry for years, and the capacity they weigh in the spirit is like a paper clip. It's like a paper clip or a paper itself. It amounts to nothing. We need to decenter these things. Another thing we need to decenter is obedience. This doctrine of obedience, we teach obedience as though we are doing God a favor. Like, if I tell you and I preach obedience to you so much, at some point you're going to obey God and just do whatever he tells you to do. God does not need our help to get to man. God does not need our help to teach and raise his children. We do what we do because we love God and because we know the pain of not having the right kind of information. At least that's what I do. But I don't do it because God necessarily need me to do it. Do you get what I mean? That if I don't teach what I'm teaching, you will never become what you ought to be. That's a lie. And that's how some people teach this obedience thing. They teach you in a way where mentally and psychologically you become so afraid of not being obedient, and Satan takes advantage of that mindset you have and project a lot of things onto you, and you're doing them thinking that it's the will of God, and it's not. We need to decenter obedience. Stop teaching obedience from a one-sided frame. Stop giving this perception of a God who sits in heaven and just has all these things he wants to do. And, you do this and do it this way and do it this time and do it this. All these rules that we think God has for people, they're man-made. I said it. They're man-made. Those are commandments of men. This is what Jesus was talking about. These people, they honor me with their lips, but their heart is so far from me, because everything they claim that I am, by what they teach, I can literally tell that they don't know me at all. Let me help you unlearn. God is more interested in you understanding than you producing. Meaning, if I come to you and say, God said do this, God will rather you understand, you have a conviction, and then out of that conviction, you follow, rather than you just doing it because he said. Because if you just do things because he said, you don't have a relationship. What you have is a dictatorship. And in this season, God is calling a lot of us into deeper, personal, genuine, and authentic relationship where he can ask you to do something and you can go back and say, God, I don't want to touch this thing until I get more information. How do I do it? Where do I go? When do I start? Does it make sense? Does it align with what I know about myself? Let me teach you how God raised me. There are many times God will ask me to do something, and the religion in me will say, yes, God said, and then he'll come back and say, do this instead. So by the time I'm done, I have 5 different instructions, and he says, which one do I really want you to do? And I had to say, I'm teaching you how God raised me. This is how I was able to break a hold of that religious mentality. And out of that 5 decisions, I had to say, they all came from him, but I had to say, and from what I know about God, what I know about the word, but more importantly, what I know about who God created me to be, I now had to figure out which of those decisions does he really want me to do? Which of them align? And many times when I started that lesson, I would fail. I think, I would go back like, I want to do this because your word says, and he would say, dig deeper. And the pattern that I saw was that most times he wasn't looking for the right choice, but he was analyzing my thought pattern, the way that I was coming up with the answers and the decisions that I was coming up. That's what he wanted to highlight to me. And so he would teach me, the reason why you think I really want you to do this is because this is what you believe. And I realized, wait, so that's wrong. And many of you, my prayer is that God takes you through this season so that you can learn why you're making some of the decisions that you're making and learn his voice genuinely. This is why I'm able to speak with this much confidence and say what I'm saying, because a lot of these things that people are doing, it has nothing to do with who God actually called them to be. And it takes a personal walk, a personal journey with God to be able to sit and say, I get the religion is telling me this is what I should do, but my relationship with God is built on this instead. I want us as a community, as a nation, as a people to unlearn and decenter and stop idolizing these things, because the revelation of Jesus is dependent on your disconnection to religion. And a lot of these things we talked about, like age and gender and marriage and these things, they are all tied into religion. And as spiritual as Africa is, the severity of poverty and lack and scarcity is enough for us to, as a people, as leaders, to re-examine the things we claim we believe about God, because something is not adding up. And in this season, I want us to reflect in the restoration room. This is a moment of restoration for us. I want us to reflect on the belief systems that we have. I want us to begin questioning the thoughts the culture brings to our mind, the thoughts that religion brings to our mind, and separate ourselves from these things so that the knowledge and the revelation of Christ can be highly exalted. And in that revelation is where deliverance, healing, blessings, riches, glory, honor, all these things that is our inheritance and our birthright, that's where it's captured. That means that sowing seed is not the answer. Fasting harder is not the answer. Doing more church activities is not the answer, as good as they may be. And God will still use those things. That is not the answer. We need restoration, Africa. We need restoration, God. We need restoration. And it is only the revelation of Jesus that can bring about this restoration.